Welcome to the TRXL podcast. I'm Evan TRXL, and in this episode, I welcome back Håvard Vasshaug. Håvard is a structural engineer by training and the co-founder and CEO of AnkerDB, a Norwegian software company that he spun out of his first venture, Reope, about 3 years ago. He's been in BIM for 21 years now, and he started on the training side, teaching architects how to work in Revit. Somewhere along the way, he became the guy with 100 Dynamo scripts, also known as the bottleneck, standing in the middle of a circle of contractors who all needed construction data crammed into his model. That experience is basically the origin story for what he's building today at AnkerDB. In this episode, we get into why it makes no sense to force construction and cost data into a design tool that was never built for it, why 6-week-old information is blowing up project budgets and schedules, and why architects are so protective of their files that they treat a shared model like a personal sketchbook. I don't know, maybe something like this one right here, which I just opened up off my bookshelf. There's a lot of great details in here, and it's funny because no one cares. All right, anyway. We also talk about risk, and this is the topic that I think you'll want to really pay attention to. Håvard's argument is that our industry has spent decades shedding risk, pushing it onto someone else when there's actually an opportunity to take more of it on and get paid for it. The firms that self-disrupt, that turn who does what upside down, end up looking light years ahead of everyone else. There's a spicy take in here too about needing more crazy ones in AEC, more people willing to punch through a few brick walls before a committee talks them out of it. That's what I love about what Håvard brings to these conversations, so obviously I had a great time with this one. As usual, there's an extensive amount of additional information in the show notes, so be sure to check those out. You can find them directly in your podcast app if you are a paid supporter of TRXL Plus. And if you're a free member, you can always find those over at the website, which is at trxl.co. All right, that's it. Look forward to hearing what you have to say about this episode. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Håvard Vasshaug. Håvard, welcome back to the podcast. It's been a couple years and it feels too long. And you've been dodging my prompting to get you back on the show because you're obviously too busy. I mean, you've got a lot going on. So talk about what you've been working on for the last couple of years since we've talked. I mean, you've reached a new threshold of wanting to deal with architects and their unstructured data. Mm-hmm. There's things that we should talk about because I think that idea alone right there is worth getting into because there's definitely an issue when it comes to how to prepare one's firm for the now, let alone the future, right? But what have you been up to for the last couple of years?
3 years ago, don't remember if this was before or after I spoke with you last time, but around this time, 3 years ago, we started Anchor, or AnkerDB as in database. My product company that we branched out of my first company, Reope, the old Bad Monkeys company. So sorry, a lot of names flying around here in the first 2 minutes, but we had Reope and then we took out Anchor. I'm still involved with both companies, but I'm lucky enough to have a brilliantly talented CEO at Reope, Joachim. Maybe you spoke. Yeah, I think maybe you spoke with him.
We did, and it was a great conversation. We actually got to meet at the AEC Tech conference in New York City, nice. Put on by Core Studio. And after that, we had a great conversation on the podcast. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. And I'll put a link to your previous episode in the show notes so people can kind of see where things were and where things are. Because I think we did talk about Reope and we talked about Anchor and we talked about kind of the Bad Monkeys history even. So all of those things that you were just apologized for throwing out all those names. I think a lot of that was covered in the first episode.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. No, and since then, I've focused a lot on Anchor, and of course, building the product, selling, marketing, and also working on positioning. And this has been big topic for. I suppose I'm more experienced. I hope I'm more experienced when it comes to product and AECO today than I was last time, because Reope essentially is a consultancy that has a product portfolio that they sell, but often as part of the service to the industry. And then Anchor is pure product. Or actually the other way around. We have we sell product and then we deliver the service as part included in the subscription fee. So we do have a service, but so it's a little bit mixed, I suppose, with both. But Anchor is very heavy towards product, and it's been intensely working on Anchor while trying to help. Joachim doesn't need a lot of help, actually. He's very autonomous, and Reope keeps growing and delivering amazing results every month. So I suppose Anchor needed a lot of tender love and care the first couple of years.
Like any early idea / young product idea, whatever. It all takes a lot of nurturing at that stage, for sure.
And it's been, I mean, if we should, here's one topic that we can talk about. If you're interested in, is the well, it doesn't have to be focused around Anchor specifically, but products in the market. I experience a lot of, or I pay attention to the community. I suppose we have a community. Sure. And what the community is talking about, where the positions of different tools in the market are located. And it's quite likely that last time we spoke, and when the idea of Anchor, the product that was born out of trying to do data management in Revit, which was what we were doing with, and was the business model of Reope, still is in some ways. That the position of Anchor has kind of changed.
Okay.
And that's a pretty interesting conversation, at least for me. Is a lot of people are talking about BIM 2.0 or BIM 3.0 and like future BIM and future data. And I think the different products and the different companies and the different people that you refer to kind of depend a little bit from your perspective. And in the early years, when we just got started with Anchor, when it was just a plugin in Revit, and you have the data is outside of Revit, I think it was really built from the perspective of giving architects a better data management tool than what Revit, with all its plugins and add-ins and scripts, offered. But as we've built and worked on the position, I think we're looking at it more broadly now. Half of our customers are contractors, and all our biggest customers financially are owners, public owners. Half of our projects are infrastructure. So we still work with architects, but it's become more broadly for us the definition of future BIM.
So why is that? Why? It's because your initial target audience was architects. It was people working in Revit who are doing design authorship in Revit, and then you're actually talking about a different set of, obviously, contractors. I shouldn't say obviously. In certain ways, contractors are using Revit too. A lot of time in the work that I was doing, public work in the U.S., of course they were using Revit. They were rebuilding models from scratch because, number one, there's no trust between the design side and the build side. So they want to be sure and cut, because they're very, they're willing to take risks, but only on things that they trust. And so therefore they're going to build their own models that they trust, that they will then do quantity takeoffs from and clash detection from and sequencing and, all of that kind of stuff. But owners, I assume maybe with some facilities management and digital twin kind of things, they might be using that kind of authoring tool, or, they're not using it for authoring, but they're using it for other reasons. But for the most part, they're not using that tool. So I'm very curious to find out why you're seeing they adopting what you're doing and where they see the value in the data, because that to me is kind of a leading indicator maybe for architects to understand why that data could be very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a couple of different angles we can take this from, but if I'm just starting one place, so it probably it probably makes very, very little sense for a construction firm, and especially an owner firm, like owners of buildings and assets, to have Revit. Mm-hmm. It's just built for architects, and then expanded for engineers like myself. So if you're a project designer, if you're an engineer and architect creating geometry and creating digital representation of the building for the construction process, it makes a lot of sense to have something like Revit. And I think that there's a lot of tools in the market, products in the market that appeared the last 5 years that are trying to position itself as a Revit killer. So whatever product people are going to end up using for the coordination and the creation of geometric space and elements, it might be Revit or it might be something else. I'm not expecting Revit to disappear anytime soon for historic reasons. Basically, nothing is selling more at Autodesk than AutoCAD still. So. But that's not to say I fully applaud and support everyone building alternative software for the BIM creation, for the creation of parametric elements in a BIM environment. Mm-hmm. But it makes no sense to present a full-fledged BIM authoring tool to a construction firm or an owner, and especially owners and even manufacturers, and then expect them to own the data flow. Because what I've learned a lot about the last couple of years, probably since we last spoke, and still am, and probably hopefully in the future we'll learn even more about, is what happens to the elements of the data that's being created somewhere and then being transported somewhere else. And there, as I said, there's probably 5 or 10 different angles that conversation can take. But the good news is that this already happens. An architect makes something, an engineer makes something, and then someday it goes out and it goes to someone else. Mm-hmm. And it goes to a contractor, it goes to a manufacturer, it goes to blah, 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 it goes to lean construction, it goes to the VDC process, it goes to an owner. The format of the exchange of that information historically has always been, drawings and tables and diagrams and graphics symbols, and that is changing now to become information. But I think the original idea, I remember in Revit probably 10, 15 years ago when Autodesk introduced parts and assemblies and you could split a floor into multiple casts. So the architect or the engineer would make one floor, and then the contractor is supposed to open that Revit model and split it into multiple cast sequences. And that just, nobody ever did that, at least not here, because it didn't make sense for them to get Revit for that work. So this is what we are doing. And we're solving that problem. And trying to do it without having to recreate all that data and all those elements.
So, okay, so that's really interesting, because the way that just with the name alone, okay, AnkerDB, right, database. Mm-hmm. Obviously, a Revit file is a database, but nobody really thinks of it that way. They think of Revit as the authoring tool. There's a 3D model in there. And it's all graphical representation. There's, of course, every element has its own set of properties, and there's a lot of depth to all that. And you have to be kind of an expert button pusher to kind of get in and do all of that work. Just with your name alone, AnkerDB, okay, I think of data. I think of it at the other end of the spectrum. And so it's really interesting to me to think of, to hear what you're saying right now, and now I'm trying to understand, okay, so how would I, if that element's already been created, how am I manipulating data to do the things that you're talking about? And it sounds to me like there's still a very geometrical and modeling based component to all that.
Well, that is literally what we're doing. That is literally what, let's say, a very big proportion of our customers, I don't remember the exact percentage, because people use Anchor for different purposes. But our position, what I want our position to be, is a data creation engine for the AEC value chain. So when an architect makes a BIM element, door, window, wall, blah, 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 whatever, or the structural engineer like me make rebar, steel, beam columns, and so on, what I want to happen then is that I send those elements with engineering and architectural data to the value chain, to the contractor, to the manufacturers, to the owners, to whoever really needs to say something about that element without having to have a BIM authoring software. Mm. And this is a key element. And it's been a discovery for us, because where we started out by taking the data out of Revit and out of BIM and making it available in a web interface, this changed for us. Obviously, all the way in the beginning, we were talking about and brainstorming about the possibility of anyone contributing to the data creation. And that is literally now the business model. What we are selling is that anyone can contribute to the data creation, not just look at data or see them in context with each other and then visualize them and do clash detection and load, but actually craft the data. And to do this, we had to go through all these steps of product iterations and discovery in the industry. So you need to adapt for change, because what happens if the architect moves the door or the engineer changes the thickness of the floor and then hits save? You don't want to wait for them to make a new drawing. And if they make a new drawing, you're recalculating, redrafting everything. So when our contractors, for instance, calculate quantities and they do their own custom quantities. So you have a door, for instance, will be a framing and then a panel and then a handle and then a window, blah, 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 whatever. There's materials and products inside of that door. They create these as like non-geometric elements, and it follows the door, and it follows the door's type, and it follows the door's size, and it follows the door's location. So the door may move. An architect will move that door to a different part of the wall or to a different part of the building, and it will change its size using parameters and whatever BIM authoring software. And then all these changes that happen all the time, you can't expect a contractor to work on manually. And this has been a big part of the solution for the product and for the engineering team that's building anchors to facilitate for those changes. Because give me a hint, Evan, if I'm getting distracted by myself here, but it's not difficult for an architect to make a good BIM model, engineering teams of all disciplines to make a good cross-disciplinary coordinated model and then hand it over to a contractor. Contractor recreates that model, and then you have the calculation, you have the BDC process, you have all the BIMs, and then, but it's very difficult to do that in a constantly evolving and changing environment.
For sure.
Yeah. So that was.
I mean, the thing that it makes me think of, and I'm curious to hear kind of the reason. Okay, so the technology is pushing the industry in that direction. Certain parties in that equation are more incentivized by what you just talked about than others, right? And so traditionally, architects are like, it's not my problem. Right? It's like, you'll get it when you get it. And we already have a million deadlines, and yep, you'll get an updated model at the end of the week. And what you're talking about is real time, right? You're talking about when the thing moves, they know about it. And talking about incentives in that way, it also makes me think of, okay, well, it depends on the delivery model that we've chosen, right? And so if it's design, bid, build, okay, well, all the design happens in the first part, and then the bid, and then, and so again, not my problem. We'll figure it out later. And so there's got to be a modification, or maybe it's just a completely different, delivery model that requires that kind of real-time collaboration and coordination to happen. So where you are, I mean, you're in Norway, right? So is this a bigger deal in Norway than it is maybe in the US in certain markets, or do you see this changing? Like, this is the model of the future today? Like, where do you see the pressure coming from to go this direction, and why should people be aligning with it? Because what I don't want to say is just because we can, we should. And so I'm curious where you're coming from when it comes to like why this is really important.
To start at the end, why this is really important, I think there's a couple of reasons for it. One being that I strongly believe that one of the reasons why projects, sorry, I'm getting geared up.
Perfect.
One of the reasons why projects are going over time and over budget is that we don't have data to act on in real time. That is why real time is, and when I say real time, it's not really real time. Nothing in this world is real time. So there's always a certain delay, but as real as as live as possible. Then let's say that most of our biggest projects, the biggest customers we work with, they usually do still a weekly delivery, or maybe in some cases daily. So I don't want to confuse a lot of people and make a lot of people angry with the real time, but the lack of updated information is a big problem in decision making.
Yeah.
So you can't expect a site manager or project manager or anyone like keeps the pulse on the project to implement the change on any level if they are working on 6 weeks old data. So if the architect is going to finish, go ahead.
Well, no, it just made me think of this time when I worked at a firm, and we actually had a stamp, the thing that you smash down on a piece of paper, because we would review printouts, paper drawings. There was a stamp, Håvard, that said, "Not most current drawing." That was the stamp. Like, we actually purchased or had it made. This is not the most current piece of paper on this project, because the current information was in the active design file on the computer. It wasn't the printout. Like, as soon as the printout's there, that is a relic of the past, because you continue working in the digital environment in this case, right? So I just think you just reminded me of that. I thought it was really funny, but you're right. Like, you can't make decisions on prior information. And so many times in our industry, like, the engineers won't even start until the architect gets to a certain phase, because then at least they have a fighting chance that it is, some of the decisions have been embedded and we're going with those, even though the design just continually evolves and changes. We see it in many different forms of that throughout the entire process, and you can't make decisions on old information if it's not the latest information.
Actually, I completely agree, and I remember also I used to put all these like hold areas on my drawings. You can't rely on this information within this box, please. I try now getting challenged by all the BDC certified contractors we work with now, is to look at it from the other side. Okay. So every or most projects that we're involved with, they have a lean methodology of VDC planning. So certain parts of the building should be done by week 1, week 2, week 3, and you split this up into
done.
Done, yeah. Well, not done, but at a certain maturity, let's say.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, whether you can rely on a certain element or a certain song's information at any given time should really be dictated by the plan. What is the plan? this building should be done by week 6. This part of the building here, rebar, should be done by week 7. These are all the cornerstones of a efficient construction process. And then I think it's, instead of the architect like holding back and say, this is not ready, we have to like bring these professions together someplace, because if the plan says that this part of the building should be ready by today, then the train is leaving the station. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, but think about it as so here's where like the old school comes in, right? And the old school is like, it's like making a lasagna in the kitchen. Like you make the lasagna, then you put it in the oven, and you don't start eating the lasagna before it's done cooking, right? You have to wait for it to finish cooking. And the design process was this really long cooking process, because things you figure out at week 10 make adjustments to things you figured out, and I'm using my podcast air quotes for the listeners out there, in week 2. And because it changes, like things you decide later have this feedback loop to earlier decisions, and they modify them. And so then therefore that's the cooking process, and that's and so it's difficult to think about this like it is a linear process, because the construction of a building, it just isn't, right, by nature. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you make a lasagna, you find your mom's recipe, and then you follow it. You already bought all the elements. You're going to bring them together in a sequence. Mm-hmm. You practice it. Maybe you did it before, and then no construction process ever is. So there needs to be room for discovery and iterations and changing, but doing that without real-time information and doing that in a static environment is a nightmare.
Yeah.
So I think actually in a way we facilitate for that to happen, because it's let's forget a little bit about the product. I don't want to talk too much about the product, but the workflow is agile. You can change your mind. And so, for instance, if the plan changes, let's say like, tomorrow we made a huge discovery, we have to redo something. Then you update the plan, and then you update the delivery schedule according to the plan, and then the metadata on the elements change. And so this, I completely agree, and I think that what we are trying to make happen actually aligns with that. But you can't do something like this if everything has to go into Revit.
Yeah.
You can't do a process like this if you're completely reliant on manufacturer detailed Revit families with all the metadata, the cost, the CO2 footprint, everything. And you can't rely on this if all the 4D, 5D, 6D, what we now call something else. But anyway, that's a different point. But all the construction data needs to go into a Revit file with a Revit expert, with a Revit license. So that is, in essence, what we're trying to do. So I think this will work better when architects and engineers use BIM authoring tools for what they are good at. Parametric 3D design, whether it's on the cloud or in desktop, doesn't matter.
Right.
And then the VDC data, the planning and the scheduling and the procurement and the costing and like all this needs to be attached to those elements in a way, but essentially modified by the contractor.
This episode is made possible with support from Part 3. If you're an architect, you already know construction administration is where projects get messy. Documents buried in inboxes, files scattered across drives or GC software, no clear record of who approved what. It's slow, it's risky, and it's costing your firm time, fees, and trust on every project. Architects deserve better tools for CA, and that's why Part 3 exists. Part 3 is the construction administration platform built for architects, not contractors, not owners, architects. They automate the grunt work behind submittals, RFIs, drawings, and field reports, so your team spends less time clicking and more time designing. It works alongside Procore, Deltek, and Bluebeam, so nothing breaks, but you maintain full control of your data. Submittals get reviewed faster with AI assistance, RFIs get responded to 30% faster, site reports go out in about an hour, straight from the job site. Over 150 leading architecture firms already trust Part 3 to protect their profit, reduce their risk, and keep construction moving. Take back control of CA. Book a demo at part3.io. That's PART, the number 3.io. My thanks to Part 3 for supporting this episode of the TRXL podcast. Now let's get back to the conversation. So you're liberating that information from the design authoring tool because it doesn't make sense to use that design authoring tool for these other things at all. Nope. And so you're saying, like, use the tool for the thing it was made to do. Don't try to make it do all of the gymnastics that it would need to do. I mean, that also points to the kind of the level at which someone needs to be that expert button pusher to operate it at, because you're taking it beyond its limitations as a piece of software, and you're defining new workarounds, you're building new things on top of it that are, held together with toothpicks and baling wire, right? Because it 100%. Wasn't made for that in the first place.
So the first owners here in my country that started, fantasizing about using the model for a downstream process, their solution was to present BIM requirements for design teams. And this, I think, also happens in the US. It happens all over the world.
Yeah,
is that you say that, okay, if I'm going to have a digital information-based downstream process, I need a lot of information in my BIM model. So
you have to start with the end in mind, right? So you need a plan on how you're going to get there. But often that prescriptive plan is like way too much for what a design authoring tool is built for. I mean, that to your point, it's like
sense.
The owner says, I want an LOD 450 model at the end, right? And it's like, and then here's all the requirements, and then you're like, well, this isn't an LOD 450 tool that we're going to be using, right? And why should you be even defining what tool I'm using to produce the work in anyway, right?
Yeah. So exactly, and everyone loses. You get all these bloated, highly detailed models in all the BIM authoring software that wasn't really created for this purpose.
They're so fragile when they're built like that, right? It's like you do the smallest thing. Somebody comes in to fix something one day and they break 8 other things by doing that because it's so fragile. Yeah.
And I used to be that person. I was that bottleneck.
Yeah.
And all the contractors standing around me in a circle, asking me to put in all the construction data in my Revit model. So I had 100 Dynamo scripts doing all that work for me. So this is what led us to start this company and in the first place. So yeah, I mean, it really makes a lot of sense. And we were talking about architects previously. And this is, I believe, is a wonderful opportunity for architects to automate this work. That I haven't really met a lot of architects who are crazy excited about metadata management on behalf of contractors. So
really,
I think no, it's problematic for some engineering firms because there are actually a couple of there are some engineering firms who built a whole business model doing this. So they sell consulting hours, actually manually entering metadata for downstream usage into BIM authoring software. That's problematic, but I think there's a lot of companies out there who understand that, this is not why I became an architect. This is not why I became an engineer. I'm basically a data. Right. I'm a manual data scientist inside of Revit.
Nobody signed up for that in those original roles. Yeah.
So the fees go to the roof and the quality goes to the floor. So you have high fees and low value, low trust in the information. So we're seeing this with some of the projects we started with a while ago that we're starting to see that ROI, that actually consulting fees related to data management is going drastically down, and then information quality is going up.
So, and is that through just the smarts of the technology, being able to apply the right kind of metadata to the right kind of objects? How do you do that?
Well, it actually, and this is probably why we are not, acquired yet, or why we're still a small team, is that this is complicated. This is complicated for a number of reasons. Contractual reasons. This doesn't work in every context. You have to have a sharing of model data across the value chain. You have to have some basic elements in place for this to work. You have to have actually usage and value in data. So if nobody cares on the other side, they're, why are we even bothering with this? So there's a couple of, I use the stars analogy sometimes. There's a couple of stars that need to be aligned for this to be able to happening. But when those stars align and we have a champion, someone who's willing to put their job on the risk to do this in a different way, then we're seeing massive savings. And how the product solves this depends on what type of data you're looking at. But I'll give you an example. So for a VDC process, you need something called the project breakdown structure. So you'll have one Revit file, right? That's normally a building or bridge or whatever you're working on. That's one file, and then that needs to be broken down into smaller buckets of data. You don't construct the whole building at once, basically. Yep. It's the same with drawings. You don't have one drawing showing all the levels.
Right.
You have one drawing for each level, and then you have different stuff on each drawing for that level. It's the same thing, just on a model context. And for this to happen, you need to split the model into several smaller pieces. And this, you call it something different, but it's something like zones or location. And there's no automated way to get this out of a tool like Revit, and actually none of the other ones either. Tekla, Archicad, Civil 3D, none of them have this ability. So you always end up building a script. The problem with scripting is the updating and the changes. You always need a scripter like me to, execute the scripts once everyone is done, which they never are. So in these projects, instead of doing that in the BIM authoring software, we just get them all to send the models to us, and then we add the location to the elements before it goes to the contractor. And then this is fully automated because it's rule-based, and we use webhooks to sit and listen to changes. And when there's a change in a model, it comes in, and then we break it down into smaller pieces, and then we send out work packages straight to the contractor. And this is just operated by normally just one human being. So you don't need to hire a lot of people.
This is like an example of like a human in the loop kind of an automation, right? Where it's and you're describing kind of the consulting piece that comes along with your product, right? Because you still need a babysitter in some ways, like a really intelligent embedded...
You need a configurator.
Okay.
You need a configurator.
I like how the visual for configurator is somebody typing on a keyboard. Yeah.
Exactly. Interestingly enough, some of our configurators are now just controlling Anchor with Claude. So they'll install Claude into Chrome and then just chat with Claude, and then Claude in Chrome controls and manages Anchor for them. But yeah, essentially, you're absolutely right. And on big projects, you normally have like one configurator for that project. But on smaller projects, you have one configurator that's managing a portfolio of maybe say like 8 or 15 projects in that same interface. So either way, the job that Anchor is doing prevents you from it. You don't have to hire a bunch of manual, operators of software, because this is possible to do. Also manually, but it's just more expensive.
Right.
And using that like location-based zone example again, this is also possible to do for like a 10-person team manually on a big project. But instead of doing that, we have one configurator and then Anchor in between. And every time there's an update, so I spoke with the owner yesterday, and he told me that they needed to change the zones on this big hospital project, 186 models. And then they just took all the zones and moved them down a couple of inches to get the holes in the floors part of the same zone, and then uploaded it to Anchor. And the next morning, 186 models were finished, processed. I love it. That's beautiful for me.
That's a success story right there. So do you get involved early enough? I mean, maybe the answer is that you never get involved early enough, and it kind of sucks. But I'm just thinking about the decisions that architecture firms have to make early on about how they split up their model into these different zones. Often backfires, right? Because you don't know what's coming, and so you're making your best guess early about how to split the models up, how, whether it's a campus or one huge building, you're still going to be splitting it up into multiple models because the data source is so heavy and you need people to be able to work in there. And then later, right, almost always it's like, oh, I wish we would have done it differently. And so you've seen so many different kinds. Are you being engaged early enough, or is it now easy enough to change that, or is that still just really, really difficult?
It's one of the beautiful things about this workflow. It doesn't matter. You can split the model. You can divide the different models and link them together in whatever way you want, because you can, like with the example on the hospital yesterday, you can change these zones as the project evolves. And it doesn't really matter how you split the models in the BIM authoring software. And
the BIM authoring software split is usually based on how you want your drawings to show up on sheets, right? And so what I assume is the thing that you're talking about is not really, I mean, it's modifying that, but is it really modifying that for the architect to get value out of it, like earlier? Yeah, no.
Well, everyone ends up using
hard.
it because it's connected to the plan and the plan of delivery. But it's really is, in this example, it really is construction data. Data that needs to be attached to an element in a BIM to support an efficient construction process.
So it's already through the design phase. It's already through all of that. Yeah. But
so all this is built in a way so that you don't have to think about this in Revit or whatever tool you use.
So are you seeing, and because I don't know the current state of this, especially maybe in Norway where maybe and I now know you're not just based, working in Norway, but model-based delivery, is that happening more and more nowadays? And so therefore they're not as concerned about drawings and how those views show up on sheets, or is that,
well, I think what's happening really is that we're never getting rid of drawings altogether, and that's not really my battle either. I don't wake up in the morning and think like, drawings. I just don't like 3,500 drawings. I think we can drastically reduce the amount of drawings because they're great for illustration and they're really good in many ways, but I don't think everything has to go into a drawing. Mm-hmm. And I suppose, maybe the first time I really thought this was 20 years ago when I was doing structural design and I was doing formwork drawings and reinforcement drawings and bending schedules, and they were like all these different outputs just to represent one thing. And then to make all these outputs, I made one Revit model in a database that is Revit. I worked in the schedules inside of Revit. I worked with 3D modeling and did a bunch of Aarhus University talks on rebar and Revit. So it feels so stupid when you're building up, and it doesn't have to be detailed either, as long as the information is good. All this, you're building up a database, three-dimensional database in your BIM authoring software, and then printing everything to PDF just because the contract says so. Yeah. So this is changing, but I mean, you asked about it before. It's changing more rapidly when you have, for instance, one owner that controls the whole value chain. Mm-hmm. What's the contract between these parties are not really a topic. So this, when we get involved with the owner, it's much easier for us to get this implemented across the value chain. But a lot of times I just sell Anchor to an engineering firm or an architectural firm or a contractor that wants to do their part of the process. But most valuable is when it's connected across the value chain. And So
to the owner. Talk about who
yeah,
that value is for. I mean, if you're selling it to an architecture firm, it seems to me like the architecture firm needs to see the value. If you're selling it to an engineering firm, they're probably looking to see the value because they're not having to have that FTE person going in and doing this data entry kind of stuff. And so the software, they're basically outsourcing that to your software and to you as a consultant, and so at
yeah,
some level.
yeah.
But yeah, talk about the different values and who gets, because if the owner, I think, would ultimately see the value in this, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're working with them and it's coordinating
Yeah,
everybody.
absolutely. And so our biggest customers are owners when it comes to at least financially, because they of course they have a huge value in an efficient construction process, and also getting a live database that they can manipulate and work with later after everyone is gone. So they have clear financial incentives, especially the ones who have been paying millions of dollars to get their BIM requirements fulfilled, which never, by the way, happened. But anyway, that's a different story. The contractors, they get a lot of value out of this because they can manipulate the data themselves without having to pay consultants to enter data into Revit. They can connect this to procurement and planning and VDC process. And the location, the example I used before, it's such a recurring topic. But I also sell it to architects and engineers who just have a delivery. Hold on, Toki. I'm on a podcast. Can you sit there? A colleague of mine came from training. Yeah, no. So a lot of architects and engineers, they have a problem on delivery. But they only have a problem with delivery if there's someone on the other side of the table who needs the information. So architects and engineers, usually designers, want, initiate this sort of thing unless they have a value out of it. And nobody's entering construction data into a BIM model for fun. You do it because someone on the other side of the table needs it.
Right.
Yeah.
It is interesting to think about it that way because the value, I mean, you talked to earlier, like nobody wants to pay for a project that is over budget and over time, and that happens all the time, right? And I think this also speaks to kind of this idea of saving time, getting more efficient, but still billing for the value that is created, right? When you're talking about like earlier in the design process, because that's a huge concern with AI right now, right? For example, this is the latest version of this story, which is, well, if these scripts, now it's AI, whatever it is, these automations can save time doing things, then how do we bill for time? What do you mean? If it takes less time, we bill less? Of course not, right? I mean, you're actually billing the same or more for higher value, higher quality, those kinds of things. Have you been having that conversation with architects, or is this just, it's not even a conversation? It's like, yeah, we don't want to do that, but of course the contract's already in place. We're still going to be billing our owner. They're even getting a higher quality, better coordinated output, and that's worth something, and it takes less time to do it.
Yes. That is usually more the type of conversation I have with architectural firms. So architectural firms, they will work with us if they have a digital delivery or information delivery that they are contractually obliged to fulfill. And then when they have that, they are usually super positive to automating this work because it really is not, and it's not easy for architects to recruit architects who want to do this job. And if you recruit a data scientist to do this job, what do you do when the project is finished and you have another project, maybe it doesn't have this type of delivery? So maybe in the future, architectural firms might have like a data configurator or maybe we'll just do it for them, which is not really a bad alternative, perhaps. But a problem that I see in engineering is that, especially like big engineering firms, have some of them have built up this as a business model. So in that sense, we're kind of disrupting them because they budget for manual data management,
Sure.
because their customers are asking for it, and then they're not really super incentivized to automate that work. Maybe they hired a bunch of BIM people to do it. So this is complicated. I think in the end, everyone will realize that this is a win-win situation for everyone. But it takes a little while because it is disruptive. And actually, I keep using that word more and more now because the engineering firms that we work with, they actually kind of self-destruct a little bit. If you think that an engineering firm's value is tied to the headcount, how many people work in your company, then what incentive do you have to work with me instead of hiring 10 BIM experts? You'd probably rather hire 10 BIM experts and then increase shareholder value. But for sure, the companies that get most value on the design side working with us, they kind of self-destruct in that way. And the good thing about that is that they really set the level for the future project with that client.
Right. This episode of the TRXL podcast is supported by Avail, and I wanted to share a piece of a conversation I recently had with one of Avail's customers. Check it out. What was the moment or the project that finally made your firm say, we actually need to manage this stuff? Do you remember?
I was there. We actually came from another platform. And so it was a platform that we felt like wasn't sort of really invested in the customer and wasn't really sort of understanding the customer's problems. They sort of had a much harder to navigate user interface. It made it harder to sort of upload and harvest these projects in the method that we wanted. And so we looked at a bunch of different products when we were abandoning that previous platform. We met Randall and his team, and we felt that these guys understand us. And so we went with their platform a number of years ago, and the community and the support that they've provided has kept us, lockstep with their advancements and development. And we just got a preview, I think, last month on some of the stuff that they're going to release this year, and couldn't be more excited. It's always something that I knew I wanted but couldn't quite articulate, and Randall always is able to do that for us. So this next roadmap is super exciting.
My thanks to Avail for supporting this episode of the TRXL podcast. Now let's get back to the conversation. I want to switch gears and I want to talk about your frustration with architects now. Because you're painting a picture of ideal situation, I think, or at least working more towards a more ideal situation. And then there's the reality of where things are and the adversity to change, the adversity to doing things differently, or I hesitate to even to say better, but we are talking about a better process, I think, especially when you're talking about quality and you're talking about reliability of information throughout the entire process for multiple stakeholders. So let's talk about your frustration, what you're actually seeing in kind of the beating your head against the wall of working with certain architects and certain engineers who are just totally averse to working in new ways. I mean, because there's plenty of people in the technology side of architecture firms, and it's not limited just to those people, but we see it a lot because this is our arena. They're seeing the same thing, right? It's just like it's difficult to modify. Behavior may or may not be the right word, because I don't want it to sound like people don't like to be told they have bad behavior. But that's a good word to kind of, because it's like these habits, the way that we've always done things, they are so ingrained. And so I'm curious to hear your current thinking around this. You ready to throw in the towel on architects and engineers, or a lot of them? Maybe not all of them, but some of them.
No, I have great faith in this industry, and I love architects. Like I told you, my wife's an architect, and many of my best friends are architects, and I'm an engineer myself. That doesn't mean I don't have frustrations.
Yeah.
I think with engineers, I really have a big problem with my fellow profession, whether the people or not everyone, but certain aspects of engineering around the risk taking, like the ability and willingness to just rethink what we are going to do today. I think a lot of engineers just go to the job and repeat today what they did yesterday.
Yeah, can I interrupt real quick, because what you're prompting in me is just so strong. It's that we have to do it. We have to continue to operate the same way we've operated. And because when you talk about assuming risk, taking on risk, you automatically have the potential to change your business model, to change your offering, if you are willing to. And what we have witnessed over the last few decades is a shedding of risk. It is moving it to other players in the field, right? So that we have less of it. And what you're saying is there's actually an opportunity to take more and get compensated for it, right?
Yeah.
And not just take it on and not get compensated for it, but to actually get compensated for it. And that pairing of those two things aren't usually in the conversation at the same time. It's just the risk part. It's not the compensation part. So I just wanted to get that out while you're talking about this.
I now almost get goosebumps. I completely agree, and it goes to me personally, because it kind of triggers also maybe disappointments that I had with. I went to school for many years to become an engineer. And I always fantasized that it was going to be more open, more creative, and more like inspirational. And that's probably why I found a lot of refuge in architecture. My last 2 jobs were in architectural firms, and that was great. For risk taking, fantastic. And thinking outside of the box and being creative about both the product and the process. But yeah, no, that. And that is the reality that I'm facing now on a daily basis. When I come and I present a solution that is validated, saving millions of dollars and producing better results, but I'm getting resistance because it turns upside down a little bit. Who does what? And that's frustrating. But that's frustrating because, oh, poor founder doesn't sell his software. It's not because but you asked me about the profession and about that discipline in the industry. That is really something that I meet now a little bit too often. And then frustrations with architecture. This might be, I'll get hate from this, but it's actually something that I thought about a lot of times, also when I was working in architecture, and also before I worked in architecture, is that or where do I start? Maybe let's go back 20 years. Can I do a small personal history?
Of course you can. Yes, let's do it.
So when I first got into BIM 20 years ago, actually 21 years ago this summer, I had been an AutoCAD operator or an engineer using AutoCAD for like 2-3 years. And I got really excited about it. I got excited about the 3D modeling, got excited about the parametrics, got excited about the change engine, got excited about the fact that I moved something in 3D, it updated everywhere else. Okay. And then my first job in BIM was to teach architects about BIM. I was a Revit trainer. And when we started getting into like complicated topics like work sharing, you're all actually together in this environment, and you have a central model and you have local models. I mean, you have no idea how many times they would ask, yes, but this is just for me.
But I can lock it down, right?
Yeah,
but I can lock it down. Don't touch my drawings. Don't touch my drawings, right?
And that is such a thing about architecture that I would like to dig a little bit in, because it becomes relevant to what we talked about before. All of a sudden in Anchor, you have a contractor who wants to, work on my data and
interrogate things and raise
in
their
real
eyebrows.
time. Exactly. So they're very protective about that.
They don't want that accountability.
No.
They don't want you messing with their stuff, but they also don't want to be accountable to. Well, and let me legitimize a piece of that, which is it's not done. So don't get in there and mess with it. It's not done. Don't ask me questions. It's not done yet. It's in the middle of the process. It's not at the end of the process. And so that's where I think that protection really comes from initially. It's just like, don't ask questions. I'm not ready yet.
Yeah.
Right. And don't waste my time.
And I mean, honestly, it might be good reasons for that. And I kind of understand it. I don't want to say like, not that. You shouldn't do that, architect.
Right.
But I suppose it's a little bit like the understanding that there are other people out there with other considerations and other things that are important to other people. And when I was an engineer, I experienced this. I'm not done. Wait. And I was waiting to link in the architectural model to do my structural coordination, and I just had to wait. But I also saw it inside of architectural firms. That's why they like Rhino. It's a 3D modeling environment, but it's also mine. It's my 3D modeling environment, and nobody goes into my file. It's locked, actually, when I open it, and they don't even close it when they leave work. So, yeah, I would challenge, and it's not always like this. I worked at a fantastic architectural firm before that was all about transpositioning and like workshops about understanding the other people's point of view. So there's a lot of good people and good companies and good projects not being like this. But I would challenge that solo thing in architecture. And you're part of a team and you're part of a whole.
Yeah, I mean, well, in school you are, unless you're doing a group project, which everybody hated doing because you didn't want to rely on other people. You're a solo act. You're the Lone Ranger. It's your project, and you get trained that way, and you don't realize you're getting trained that way, but you are getting trained that way. And then you get out into the real world. You're working and it is a team sport. Every project is a team sport. And then you fight that the whole time, right? You fight that because of lots of reasons. Yeah.
Yeah. So then, of course, in my daily job today and yesterday and tomorrow, I meet sometimes architectural firms. And then I come and I say, oh, no, but the contractor needs your data. They need the quantities from a model and they need it today, like in real time. And I go, oh, I don't know. So that's sometimes a little bit of a hard sell, but the project usually benefits, and also the architect, as I mentioned already a few times today, they really become happy when they don't have to cram all that construction data into their design software.
So, I mean, a lot of times architects are forced into delivering with a technology or a methodology workflow by someone downstream putting those requirements on them, and that's the only way that they kind of start to get their toes and then their ankles and then their knee deep into this new frontier. Is that really still the way? Do you see architecture firms that are getting ahead of this and positioning themselves so that they can be the expert delivery person for high quality coordinated models, or is it still very reactive?
It's very reactive, and at least in my experience, and there for sure there are probably firms out there who are taking this seriously and maybe even doing in-house development. I know Reope and Joachim, they work with some of them, but I'm a little bit surprised that not more architects are interested in automated information delivery the way we think about it. But again, it's fine. We maybe focus more towards now the down the stream in the value chain and involve the architects in the workflow, definitely. a lot of this process, it fails often because of architectural model input. So that needs to be good. The architectural model and the structure of the data in the architectural model, and the geometry also. The quality of it is important for this process to happen. But it's more reactive, I would say. Yeah.
Well, I mean, to hit on, bring up something that you brought up earlier, it's like you didn't go to school to learn. Even that's not what you signed up for. I mean,
yeah.
Structured data. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, it's all abstract representation of geometry on paper. Like, it ends up in a PDF. It's drawings, and of course, whatever is the fastest path to get me to have it represented properly, and by properly I mean look right on a piece of paper, not actually be right, but look right on a piece of paper. This is where field regions came in, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And so the incentive is it just has to, because the model is built for what? It depends, right? The model is built to get a permit, or the model is built to basically hit the requirements of the contract, right? For that phase of a project. And it's not for constructability or even for rendering, or, there's different models for different things. And so the incentives, the way that I put it a minute ago sounds really amazing to me, which is, and I'm not trying to just say what I said sounds amazing because I said it. I'm trying to say, if you're a firm that says and actually does that really proactive stance to say, we're the firm that high quality, coordinated, we do all of that stuff so that the project runs smoother and on time and on budget and all of those things, that's a completely different mindset and stance in the industry than most firms are taking. It doesn't seem difficult to stand out if you were to take that proactive stance. And yet there are so many firms that are just like, okay, but there's so many unknowns in there. I don't like all those unknowns. That's risk. And so therefore, no, like we've invested decades into the way that we do it. Why should we upend that? Because our efficiencies are in our knowing of how we've always done it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I wish I could say that there were more proactive companies. There are some, of course, and we work with some of them, but it's really, and I think most of them are thinking this is going to come. One day I'll have to think about it, and they're not being very proactive about it. And the lost opportunity with that is that actually a lot of their customers today that are going through their deliverables and going through their data are not very impressed. So it was a lost opportunity to actually look good in the eyes of the future AI. If you're going to use this data for anything, any automation in the future, or any cross-portfolio, cross-project learning, or anything really, you're going to need a layer of structured data, and it's just not there, and that opportunity is not being grabbed by a lot of firms, and that's a little bit disappointing, to be honest. So I wish they did, but usually what I hear is that no, we just deliver structured data if our clients require it. If our clients require it and pay for it, we're going to do it.
Sure.
There's but maybe it could be that also there are firms out there that are taking this seriously. They're just not talking with me.
So reputationally, you're saying like it's a potential benefit, but are there? I would love to hear what the other benefits are. So, I mean, obviously, you're doing this on a new project. You're not doing this on your old projects. Is there any way to apply this kind of thing that you're doing to old projects that would benefit an architect to make better decisions on this project that's starting right now? Or is it just a from now moving forward kind of a thing?
depends on whose perspective you're taking. One of the first construction firms we started working with, called Bakke here in Norway. We worked with them for now almost 3 years. Quite recently, they uploaded all the data that they have ever received in a BIM format from architects and engineers. And the results they told me were shocking. It was most of it had no data, and some of it had some data, and most of the some data was really bad.
Before you go on, so can you explain it all? Do you know what that process was for them? Did they have to upgrade all those old versions of models to a current format? Can you read any version of a Revit model? You don't have to do any of that? Okay. Because that would be a limiter. That would be like this is no go if for a lot of firms if you had to do all that upgrade process. I remember when COVID hit and we had 4 versions of Revit running all these old file formats, and then all of a sudden everything had to go in BIM 360 because all of a sudden we had 350 offices, not 7 anymore.
Yeah.
And so all the models had to be of a certain caliber for anybody to have access to them. And you're saying you don't have to do that, because I could imagine that would just kill the project immediately if they had to do that.
In this particular case, we were talking about 3,800 IFC models. So they had an IFC library of model data over like 10, 15 years. And that then you don't have to think so much about Revit, and it's easier to upgrade. And then we break it down into elements, and then you have elements and properties, and you see a massive data set.
I imagine those old projects just had very little data attached to them, and then it's grown over the years, right? As people they had to rely on it more, but they also got smarter about how they did it.
Yeah, and then and as you remember what we talked about before, now they have a capability to transform and change that data. So they can actually enrich it and change it and restructure it, which they do to a certain degree. There's some things, you can't move, the geometric or limitations around changing geometries and so on. But the metadata is super easy to change. But you could do the same thing with Revit. And actually, that's a lot of the US customers that we work with, and also European customers who are doing this workflow with Revit. They do exactly this. They set up maybe 8, 12, 15 projects in Anchor, and then they import Revit models from different places and then restructure the data for their need. But of course, back to the original question, imagine you're a general contractor of a certain size and you work with multiple architectural firms over the years, and then you open one architectural firm's data and it's great. The structured naming structure according to the standard, like proper use of formatting and everything. I mean, you, at least for the people who see this data and use it, you're putting yourself in a pretty good position for future work, I would say.
Yeah. Let's take a short break from the conversation to invite you to join the most influential technology leaders in the AEC industry at Confluence. Composed of in-person events and a podcast co-hosted by yours truly, Confluence is designed to foster conversations between AEC firms and technology companies so they can learn, share, and engage with each other to support industry innovation. Software company Avail, which creates content management solutions for the AEC industry, started hosting Confluence events in 2019 to understand what firms are needing, wanting, and thinking around technology. To learn more about Confluence, explore upcoming events, and listen to podcast episodes, go to confluence.getavail.com. My thanks to Confluence for supporting this episode of the TRXL Podcast. And now, let's get back to the conversation. You just said some key words that I want to dig into. You said the standard, the naming, the structure, the format.
A standard.
Every project has a standard, and so then you start to look across the portfolio of standards on projects applied or missed on projects, and it's like, well, you're dealing with a lot of variation in that. Yeah.
This is the beauty with what I love with this workflow is that you don't have to tell the architects to work on this standard. You just need a standard. You need structured data, but it can be in different formats and in different structures. You just need a foundation of good data. So if it's all shit, then it's very difficult to do something about it. But if there's a standard, then you can transform it to something else. In the most basic example, you have all these like classification standards for building components: Uniclass, Uniformit, Omniclass, Colby. We have a bunch of Norwegian stuff. If you just have one, if you have a database of classified according to the Omniclass, for instance, it's not difficult to add Uniclass to it later, because you already have a foundation of structured data. So this is not, I think sometimes people I spoke with or met at conferences, presentations, and maybe podcasts also confused and thought that I wanted, all these people in the industry to add all this data into their BIM models. It's really the opposite thing I'm trying to do. Reduce the data in your model and your data set, but make it structured. So a company, a general contractor that works with 6 architectural firms on 6 different projects, it doesn't matter if it's the same standard on every one of those projects, as long as it's a standard and what a naming structure. It's
because
so
then
easy.
you can map those different standards to each other, and you can do that behind the scenes.
We even have there's a whole function inside of Anchor that uses Claude AI to predict possible matches for different standards. So you can say, I have this is Colby, translated to Uniclass or whatever. So that's but this becomes very, very difficult if there's no good data at all in anywhere.
So do you have, I hate to say it, but like templates, do you offer standards to choose from? I mean, because a lot of times they're just being dictated by somebody down the chain, right? Like we talked about earlier, the owner might say, okay, this has to be to this standard, or the AHJ, the jurisdiction might say, here's the standard that you need to prepare them to, but sometimes they don't, right? And it depends on the type of project. But so you give that option, so that, because I like templates, right? Architects love templates because then I don't have to think about that. I don't have to design it. I don't have to design a new standard. I can just say, we will adhere to whatever. And if you don't care, here's 3 to choose from. We're going to pick the best one for this project.
We get really hands-on in many of the projects, many of the projects that our customers are working with. There's actually most of them invite us to their project if there's security people and like privacy requirements allow for it, and then they use often content that we create for them. There's a whole cost calculation and CO2 calculation interface inside of our product that links non-model elements to model elements, and then uses quantities from the model elements to, give site managers a live cost calculation interface. And this can get a little bit complicated. So we usually configure that together with the customers in their.
Is that something an architect could get access to without a contractor being involved, so that they could understand cost? So that, I mean, it seems to me like there's lots of potential value unlocks in a system like this for the, not knowing who the other players are, or that maybe they haven't been defined yet, even to be able to offer more value to their clients. Yeah. Right.
There's live cost and live CO2 calculation connected to non-model elements. So you wouldn't model paint and door, like you don't model everything in a BIM. You model basic building elements, and then there's a calculation interface that calculates the quantities of different materials and products from the basic BIM elements. And
that requires some level of of having those elements be smart enough so that your system can read those, though. To
use a Dynamo word that I learned 15 years ago, you need a key. So if the key needs to match, and then when the keys match, so instead of over detailing your wall, for instance, or your wall types, you can use your type name as a key and then match that to different products that are in that wall. And then if it doesn't match, we'll highlight, hey, you got a bunch of unmatching keys here. But then, to your original point, so when we start working like this with our customers, we provide them with data and help them set it up and configure it as the project moves along. Yeah.
There's got to be some kind of, I was going to say, there's got to be some kind of educational component though too, because if an architect isn't used to working like that, and they want to get the value out of it, then they need to learn how to do it the right way. So that's something
we spend a lot of time teaching people, and then we teach people basic BIM, we teach people Revit, we teach people Anchor, of course. We teach people how to think in an algorithm. So there's a lot of rules. Remember what I said before. Everything in Anchor, or the basic component in Anchor, is automation and rule-based processing of data because of all the changes. So when you're learning how to configure rules, there's a huge learning component to that. So we spend a lot of time teaching the people we work with how to automate and how to work with rules, but also what is a key? How do you set up a rule that changes the naming structure, and how do you and that is. So we spend a lot of time actually like producing YouTube videos, and the help section on our website has been greatly evolved the last couple of months. But this is a never-ending, this is ongoing work.
Yeah, I mean, this I keep coming back to this idea of, if you know these things and then you want to implement them, you can set yourself apart from 95% of the other practicing architects and engineers out there.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting to think about it that from that perspective, because if that's who you want to be, I mean, think about like all these top lists of architects and engineering firms. You know, ENR's got a list, BD&C's got a list, whatever, and it's like, we're number 142 on the list of top 500 firms, and it's like, I would think as an owner, somebody looking to pick an architect, I'm willing to look at the top 5, maybe the top 3. That's where I want to talk to. I want to talk to the best.
Yep.
How do you get to that? I think there's a lot of ways you can get to that, but it's not just by the projects that you see in a picture, because that is not the real story. That is a piece of the story. All of these other things that we're talking about that are indicators of quality in a design process and an outcome and a budget and a schedule are totally viable ways to get there. And oftentimes they're because they're harder. They're not just, harder's difficult word to quantify, right? But it's difficult to do the things we're talking about. But if you do them, it unlocks and makes easier a lot of these other things, including client satisfaction in the end, because they paid less and got it on time, which is a big deal for repeat work, especially. So it's interesting to think about how much opportunity there is, because the process is so fragmented. The process is so messy, and it's always been messy, and people just accepted it as messy. But I think now, because of how easy it is to actually interrogate kind of this process because of the internet and just instant communication, owners are actually looking for a better process, and they are not willing to pay whatever the amount that they're paying for something that should not cost that much. I mean, really, like, if we were just to step back as an industry and reject the fact that it is the way it is and it's going to continue to be that way, and if we could build a better version of it, we absolutely should, and we should be a part of that, not waiting for an owner to demand that from us. And if you can be a part of that proactively, then you actually have an opportunity to be the expert in that part, the sought after firm in that equation. I mean, it just seems
so actually relating to what we talked about before, I think that many of the architects that I worked with in my life were really good at thinking outside of the box. I mean, it's a creative profession. You wake up in the morning and you have an inspiration and blah, 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 blah. Okay. And then I kind of painted a meek picture of my fellow engineers in thinking outside of the box. But it really is an exercise of doing that. And then you have to go blind in the future a little bit. Sometimes you just have to close your eyes and go into the dark hole and see where it takes you.
Optimism, right? It's like this optimistic, and that I really do feel like architects are by nature, and I'm generalizing to some extent, but that optimism of we're going to figure it out, we don't know how, is a quality that is super valuable in this.
I mentioned before, one of the biggest public building owners, basically the state entity that owns the hospitals in Norway. I spoke with the guy yesterday, and they have, of course, multiple projects going on at the same time. And I asked him, how is this one project, the biggest one that you have that is using Anchor, how is that doing? And he said, it's miles ahead of everyone else. And only component about that is the product. What I love about that project is that in that project, the design team self-disrupted. They went blind into the future and said, just like, they're going to work with me and they're going to do a bunch of things. They also work with Joachim and Reope. And they are going to self-disrupt, and I think they probably thought, we're going to look really good at the end of this project. And they do. Because when I talked to that owner today or yesterday, he said, like, no, absolutely. It's amazing. It's remarkable because they're light years ahead of their competitors. And
miles or light years? You got to pick one. Come on.
Let's go with light years. Why be modest?
We're making claims here. Let's go big.
Sugar is getting to my head.
But they had, like you said, they had to kind of have that blind optimism to go into that, and then
interestingly enough,
but what you're saying is at the end, like, oh, it really is that much better and different because they're willing to actually modify the way that they've done things to do things a different way and see better outcomes because of it.
And actually, it's funny. I have so many things to say about this, but one guy in that firm, and this is a multinational design firm. It's big. One person at that company said, "No, we're gonna do it differently. We're gonna do it differently this time." And this tells at least me as something about how much we rely on personalities for disrupting in this industry.
But also the ability to have the agency to do that is a thing. Because there's lots of people in firms who say, I want to do it differently, and then they get shut down by the next person or 2 levels up or 3 levels up. And that happens all the time too. And
this actually, it reminds me, I have so much admiration for this person because he just didn't stop. He got all the no's, he got a no, he got a no, he got a no, and then eventually, actually, we got to a place where we could start working together. But the amount of directors that told him no before we actually started working, and remember, this is one of the biggest ongoing construction projects in Norway. It's not some small apartment somewhere, although we're a small country, but, and he didn't stop. And it reminds me a lot like how I felt when I was starting with Revit 20 years ago. I didn't take no for an answer. I just kept pounding that wall. No, we're going to do this. No, we're going to do this. No, we're going to do this. And so I suppose it's the same basic components of innovation that you need. Whatever
Attitude.
The technology. The
Fortitude.
The mindset. Exactly.
Yeah,
Not to blow my own horn, but
I mean, you're absolutely pointing at, because it's not going to just happen. I think somebody has to really want it and not take no for an answer, because we're at the point where it's very difficult to change the direction the ship is going. They're big ships, and one person is a very small rudder, right? So, I mean, it's an important point to make that you really have to have that fortitude and keep going.
So this guy alone, basically, well, he has a team around him, support and everything. He is disrupting, maybe the whole industry. at least here locally, and has a big star with the customer because of it. So but I think you need to find, at least that's something I consider probably the most important job that I have as the founder of this company and CEO, is that I have to find these people. I have to find the people who are willing to go through a couple of brick walls to disrupt. Because without it, it's really, really uphill without these people. And actually, I started noticing something in my sales calls when I meet new leads, or I talk to new people, the moment someone says that we need to get a committee in place to make this decision, I get worried. Because
for sure.
It really is like, I often see this, the people who really pound through those walls to disrupt their own project, disrupt their own organizations, and change the way they're working. They don't need a committee to make it happen.
Yeah. I don't think committees make things happen for the most part. I don't think
that's why committees
stop
exist.
Things from happening. There's a lot more opportunities for no's in a committee setting than, I mean, it's the reality for sure. So I understand your trepidation there when you hear if a committee's going to get involved, that your shoulders kind of drop. You're just like, okay.
I can't really. It's difficult for me to say no committee. But when I see an opportunity, I try to suggest maybe just one person. Maybe we can be 3 in the next meeting or something like that. But
anyway. I mean, it speaks to the value of small teams doing things, right? Because there's less red tape, there's less lines of communication, there's more agency to make decisions. I think there's more trust, especially if it's a high performing team, right? It's definitely like that trust of people figuring things out and getting things done is higher in those kinds of settings. And as soon as the bureaucracy gets involved, like things slow down, things take more time. There's more opportunities for no. There's people. The devil's advocate is always in the room, and some ideas are so fragile. The devil's advocate is just I hate to say it like this, but it's like a baby killer, right? It's just like smash that as fast as possible. And people take a lot of pride in being that person who saved the company from having to go off and do this innovative R&D expense. And I mean, that's there. Kill. Oh, we almost went down this risky path. I stopped that from happening. Give me a gold star. There's lots of people like that in these industries for sure. So yeah, it's a lot of people have that working against them in their firm, who are the person who's trying to punch through those brick walls but keeps hitting brick walls.
I think if I was going to say, if some CEO at a big engineering firm or architecture firm came and talked with me one day, what should we do? I would really encourage them to let these people break through sometimes. I'm not sure that we should be so scared of that risk. What can really go wrong? And this is conversations that I often have when we start a new project. You ask me, is it better to come in early or late in the project? And very often, my job in the beginning of a collaboration with someone is to take away the fear and say, no, listen, this is going to work. Product is great, the team is great, we're going to help you if something breaks, blah, blah, blah. And you can always just stop working like this and go back to your old method. It's not a problem. If I was in charge of an engineering firm, if I was a CEO of an architectural firm or something, I would try to find the people who are willing to go through brick walls for something that they feel strongly about. I understand also, like I've run a company for 8 years. You can't just innovate everywhere all the time. But sometimes you have a person on the team, or you're working with someone who you can see there in their eyes that they really believe this is powerful and they want to do it, then you have very little, in my experience, to lose by just trying it and letting them try it.
I think that's part of it, is finding them, but it's also in that leadership role, it's creating an environment where it is safe to be that person, safe to be the one who has the fire and the passion, because there's a lot of places where it is not safe to be that person. You're your target, you're singled out, you are the crazy one, right? Be
quiet. What's that commercial? The crazy ones. Wasn't it Apple? No.
Yes. Yeah. Here's to the crazy ones, right?
Yeah. And I think I don't think we have enough crazy ones in AEC. I think we need the more crazy ones, and I think we need to give them some wiggle room. And I think we should try to avoid to put them in committees. Or, but sometimes, I mean, a lot of it is going to be like, not lead to anything, but. That's the reality, right? It's there's 80% failure, maybe more. That's why we have startups. Yeah. That's why I've been in startup world for 8 years. That's why you have Silicon Valley. That's why you have all these big corporations acquiring companies, and because there's a certain element of mutation, like natural selection, to that process. You have crazy people who wake up like me 5 years ago and thought, we should do all this, but outside of Revit. We do all this outside of Revit. It's a little bit of a crazy idea when everyone wants to put it inside of Revit. So maybe a moment of madness, but how do you know if you don't try?
Yeah. Håvard's hot take, his spicy hot take, is we need more madness. We need more crazy. More
Last
risk
time
takers.
It was anger and madness and risk.
I can see which end of the spectrum you're on, Håvard.
I need help.
No, it's a wake up call. I agree with you that the aversion to risk it's like the slow death of the profession, the industry. It is making things worse, not better. And I get it. Like, you are actually literally dealing with people's lives at some level. And I don't think the things that we're talking about today are at that level. We're not. And so there's plenty of opportunity for these kinds of risks and for these out of the box ideas to set yourself apart from these other, from the existing way of doing things, from the talent pool that's out there. I mean, I think that you're spot on with your observation. So I love that you came on the show to share your spicy takes, and I always feel like there's a great conversation brewing in some of the things I see you posting on LinkedIn, which is the main place I see what you're doing. But I'll put links to everything where you can see what Håvard's up to in the show notes for this episode. Håvard, this has been great. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Thank you.
If you watched all the way to the end, thank you. That actually means a lot. I have 2 things I'd ask of you before you go. 1, hit subscribe right now if you haven't already. It's totally free. It takes 1 click, and I'm really trying to get to 1,500 subscribers. We're not there yet, and every single one counts. If this show has been worth your time, that's the easiest thing you can do. Number 2, if you want to go further, if you want to support independent coverage of this industry and get ad-free episodes of the podcast, plus my full Leadership Edge newsletter, head over to trxl.co and click the join button. The link is in the show notes. $12 a month, and you'll be one of the people who actually makes this possible. All right, that's a wrap. Subscribe, share it with someone who would get it, and I'll see you in the next one.